I guess the question is, did I have any inkling of who I was dealing with?
Well, you know,
Is that
as a
fair?
non-Republican, I have some fairly negative feelings about some people in the administration, and I just wondered if you had any of those prior to your telephone call.
No, I guess I have a defective creep meter because I never picked it up. I mean, I only met Rove one time, kind of in passing, and I was way back I was with a Secret Service detail. He came to me and I introduced himself, and I mean, I didn't see a pitchfork and horns and a tail, you know. So, but I later found out that I mean, he really was bad news, and he caused a lot of damage. Monica Goodling, never met her, exchanged a few emails with her, had no idea that she would take the Fifth Amendment and ask to testify. Kyle Sampson, he just seemed really young. He seemed like a kid right out of college. I mean, he was a little bit older, I think he was in his early 30s. But no, I didn't have the sense that they were out there to rape and pillage our Constitution. Now, you have to understand, though, there's always been this tension between the field, which is where the US Attorneys are. That's where most of the work gets done for the Justice Department, and headquarters. And that's true for lots of organizations. You've got headquarters and you've got the branch offices, right? And I don't recall hearing any rumbling from my colleagues that we've got some problems back at the home office. Because you have to understand, we were really busy. I mean, our 5 southwest border districts, 2 in Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, and Southern California, we account for 1/3 of all federal prosecutions because of our immigration narcotics caseload. So we're swamped. I mean, we don't have time to really, sift through the tea leaves and try to figure out, who the baddies are at the Justice Department. Let me answer your question. How much time do I have?
Maybe a couple more questions or 2 more questions? Or
No, this has been great. I really appreciate your very thoughtful questions. So maybe I'll take 2 from folks that have not asked any questions. So first you, and then I'll, okay, 3, and then I'll end with you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Given that 7 people were fired, what does that say about all of the other attorneys out there? That does this mean that others were contacted and did agree to play ball, and that's why the number was 7? Or what limited it to this group, and what does it say about those that are still there?
I don't think you can draw the conclusion that the ones that are there sold out or political hacks. Although, when I went to this NAFUSA conference, this National Association of Former U.S. Attorneys conference in Miami, my former colleague from Eastern Texas, Matt Orwig, Republican, Bush appointee, said, you know what really galls me about this is people assume that because we are left behind that we're the hacks. He goes, I was never contacted by anybody. No, but nobody ever put any pressure on me. So that being said, there were a couple of U.S. attorneys, including the guy who took Bud Cummings' place in Little Rock, a guy named Tim Griffin, who had no business being a U.S. attorney. His qualification was doing opposition research for the Republican Party. He didn't have a prosecution background. He was a kid, and when it was his big mouth that got him in trouble when he started talking about, well, there's a new section of the Patriot Act in which the Senate doesn't have to confirm me. I can stay in here for the rest of the administration. Well, so guess who heard that? Senator Mark Pryor's chief of staff heard that within 48 hours. Pryor's a Democrat. Pryor starts calling DOJ saying, so what's this new Patriot Act thing that I'm hearing about? And that's what broke it loose for Tim Griffin. And then you had Rachel Palouse in Minneapolis, who had no business. She was young, inexperienced, had never been a prosecutor. And you had what John McCabe likes to call cultural warriors. It's very conservative young kids with great credentials. They went to the best schools, but didn't know how to get their hands dirty. Had never gone to jails like Ray and I had been visiting clients. Had never gone to a crime scene. Had never talked to a victim's family. Everything for them was theory. So those 2 are not in office anymore. But I can say pretty convincingly, in my view, that the ones that are there now were not compromised. Yes?
Yeah, do you think that Wilson and Domenici acted with their own initiative? I mean, without somebody calling up and telling them, you need to go and lean on negative Iglesias.
Yes. I don't think Karl Rove picked up the phone and said, "Hey Pete, I really need you to do me a favor." Take yourself back to mid-October of 2006. Patsy Madrid is ahead of Heather Wilson. And if you remember that Zogby poll, she was up 9 points over Heather. She was desperate. Heather was desperate. And what she had heard, and the reason I know this is people tell me, they say, hey, the rumor on the street is you've sealed indictments, that you've got the case ready, but you're going to wait until after the election. So Heather had heard that, so she wanted to find out about the sealed indictment against your client and some of the others. Well, she didn't hear that what she heard was false. We were working out guilty pleas with some cooperating witnesses. We'd sealed those. But it wasn't the sealing didn't happen until after her phone call. So she got it completely wrong. But I didn't tell her anything because she wasn't entitled to know that information. Plus, I could have gotten in a lot of trouble for saying, oh yeah, Heather, let me tell you about these sealed indictments. It's just between us. Because of course what she's going to do with that information, she's going to use that against Patsy Madrid, saying, here's another example of the federal government doing a public corruption case and Patsy's done nothing for 8 years. That's what she would have done. And, you know, again, my job was law enforcement. It wasn't politics. One more question. Yes, ma'am.
Knowing that, knowing what you know now, and in the midst of an election coming up, and that so much of what happened was a way to try to influence the election in the past, how do you feel about the security of the voting situation for this coming election?
I think given the high visibility of this issue, I think you're going to see a lot less voter fraud going on. And let me be very clear here. I think voting fraud does exist on bits and pieces, but I mean, I was looking for examples of organized systemic corruption. I didn't find it.
I'm not talking about the voter fraud per se, but the voter fraud as a red herring to try to influence what's happening election-wise, just as in Indiana recently, the Supreme Court upheld the need for photo ID for voting.
Right.
It's that kind of thing that I'm concerned about, all of these little attempts to influence the whole election.
They may try to trot out the old whipping horse of voter fraud. It's unconvincing. I mean, just look at the figures from the Justice Department themselves. And I just saw this figure just recently. Where did I see that? But anyway, going back to 2001, the Justice Department's only filed 70 or 80 voter fraud cases. Period. Every year we file about 70,000. So that's a drop in the bucket. I mean, it's not a problem. Will that stop the activists from trying to use it as a wedge issue or a red herring? Probably not. But, you know, I mean, based on my experience looking for legitimate voter fraud cases, it's not a problem. And, you know, Schumer made the point when I was back in Washington in March, saying personal one-on-one fraud is, I mean, the voter ID thing's not going to stop that because that's not a problem. So, you know, I think that theory's been discredited. But, I mean, I hope I'm not wrong. I hope I'm not wrong on that issue. You know, the point of all this is voter fraud only makes a difference if elections are razor thin. If the election, if you win by a large majority, it can overcome even instances of alleged voter fraud. I just hope and pray that whoever wins in the fall wins by a large margin, or you're going to see this trotted right back out. You've been really fabulous. Thank you so much for your questions.